This is the Troutbitten Podcast.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
Troutbitten?
Yeah, Troutbitten.
Troutbitten.
It's about trout.
Wild trout. This is Troutbitten. This is the Troutbitten Podcast, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Dominic Swantowski. I'm the owner of Troutbitten and the author of Troutbitten.com. So for tonight's episode, it's all about your questions. I have a backlog of great listener input, suggestions, and questions, and we're going to roll through a bunch of these and see how many we can check off the list. These questions range from gear talk to ethics, from fly selection to reading a trout river. And while most of our podcast episodes are narrowly focused on one theme, this one is spread out across topics. So we'll jump right into those questions in a moment. But first, this is now the 56th episode of the Troutbitten Podcast. And that's a lot of conversation for you to dig into, with well over 60 hours of trout talk. I know many of you have found Troutbitten through this podcast, and I'm glad you're here. I get a lot of questions about many things that we touch on in these conversations. And the neat thing is that I can almost always provide an article or two from the Troutbitten website to help answer those questions. And if you listen all the way to the end of these podcasts, then you hear the readout, which mentions this. The Troutbitten website now hosts over 900 articles that I've written and published since 2014. And I've recently organized the website menus and categories. I also improved the search page to help you find more of what you like. And then, in addition to the podcast and the Troutbitten website, the Troutbitten YouTube channel continues to add excellent content. It's now over 40 videos strong. And the latest one, part of the Fly Fishing the Mono Rig series, explains and demonstrates the tightline advantage across 4 different styles, with nymphing on a pure tightline, to an Indy, to a streamer, and to a dry dropper rig. So last thing here, your support of this project is what keeps it going. It's your direct donations, your shopping through affiliate links on the Troutbitten recommended gear page, your Troutbitten shop purchases, and your support of the Troutbitten ad partners that allows this project to continue expanding into new territory. Those funds are important, and I thank you. But just as important is liking, subscribing, and commenting across all the channels of Troutbitten. That's the way the internet works, really. Those interactions and those statistics are what helps grow the project, helps more people find Troutbitten, and shows the advertisers what they want to see. So for this podcast, leave a great rating for us and comment on Apple or Spotify. That matters a lot. Same for YouTube. Subscribe, like, and comment, and then follow Troutbitten on Facebook and Instagram. All of that is how you can keep this engine running. Thank you again to everyone out there for spreading the good word and supporting this Troutbitten project. Okay, I have the Troutbitten crew with me tonight, and without taking up much time, let me just quickly introduce these guys. Here is Josh Darling of Wilds Media. What's up, bud?
Hello.
You feeling good?
Feeling good.
You happy, in a good mood now?
In a real good mood. My mic is working very well.
Okay.
And it's
Here's Austin Dando. What are you doing, bud?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing well. How are you?
Great, thank you. Here is Trevor Smith, Dr. Wool, Dr. Trevor Smith.
Hey, how's it going?
What were you brushing there? Brushing something?
I'm brushing mineral oil onto my broadheads after the season.
Multitasking.
Keep them from rusting because they're made out of A2 tool steel, which is non-stainless, but a hard material. So they can rust. So
Do you wipe your fly rods down?
Oh, I do.
Do you?
Yeah, I like holding, sometimes when I'm watching a show in the evening, I'll hold my 30-06 and those silicone claws made by Hoppies. They're impregnated with some silicone. I like to just polish my gun. I like to...
Oh, no.
No.
Nice.
You get out of here.
Get out of
I
here.
like to put mineral oil on my broadheads. I like to take care of my stuff.
What about your fly rod, though? Do you polish that? Do you?
I wipe it down.
Do you?
Yeah, but not every time I fish.
I ignore my fly rods.
I don't
never
think
wipe
I've ever wiped down a
Seriously,
fly rod.
do you get the rest of you guys? You wipe your rods off?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what Trevor does.
Maybe when I fish an AMD stream.
Well,
There you go.
yeah, that's different. All right, Billy Dell. What's up, bud?
Boy, howdy.
Howdy.
Boy, howdy.
Howdy. All right. Hey,
Howdy.
we're missing our buddy Matt Grobe tonight. He's up in the air. He's up in the sky in an airplane on his way back to Montana from Pittsburgh. Got to see him. Bill, you got to have a pizza with him, right?
I did. I delivered him some new trail.
Nice.
I
The orange
didn't get a
can.
review from him yet, though.
I saw the picture. He seemed excited to get the cans in his hand.
He was excited.
I tried to do that when I got to see Matt at a tailgate for a Steelers game, but I couldn't get the cans. Everywhere I went, they were out. Good for them, bad for us.
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready? You ready for this? Question time.
Ready.
Game on.
Listener questions. Got a bunch lined up. Let's see how many we get through without getting too long on the time. You are busy over there, Doc.
Always.
Mm-hmm. All right, here we go then. Trevor, will you read this one? How about us starting us off, bud?
So this one comes from Derek Alonzo in Michigan. Dom, I have a real quick question for the podcast crew. I'd love to hear all of your opinions on this. How far will a trout move for a fly? I know there are many factors at play, but what are your general thoughts? So I feel like we should sort of break this down by fly type, because I feel like the answer is pretty different depending upon the fly type, and I think it matters. So why don't we start with how far will a trout move for a nymph in general? Anybody?
I've seen him move maybe 5 to 6 feet at times.
What about in general?
Wow.
We're not saying like Olympic record for a
What's
trout.
the max distance?
Well, I'm
For
giving
a
you the
trout.
top end. You give me the bottom end.
6 inches.
No, yeah.
Yeah,
I
6, 8
would
inches.
put average around a foot. Yeah. Not average, but I think average would be drifting it right to them. That's where we get the most strikes. But I think an easy ask is to ask them to move 1 foot over to their left or right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you've ever watched a trout work, which a few times I've watched a trout nymph, and you see it's flashing, the sides of it, but it's pretty much sticking in one place. It may be an inch or two back and forth, but maybe there could be a difference in a freestone versus limestone just based on how much aquatic life there is, because seems like our trout have a lot coming through the water column, but our trout don't seem to have to move a whole lot.
That's the way to do it, is see if you can set up and watch a trout just work. Forget about our flies. Forget about how far they will move to our flies. Just find a trout. If you watch them long enough, you're going to see him eat things, as long as it's not spooked, and just hiding. Oh, you just see its tail underneath the rock. You get it. If you can find a feeding fish, watch what it does. And I'm going to say around here, I mean, a few inches, 6 inches, a foot almost is almost stretching it. And then every so often, like Bill said, I'll see him move over 4 or 5 feet. I don't know, about 6, 7, 8 feet. At that point, they're chasing something down. As far as like sliding over and just kind of moving to get something and without expending much energy, not too far. And then I will say, let me bring this up. In one seam, I see that they'll drift back in one seam quite a bit. And that's not hard for them to just tilt let's say they're taking an emerger, right? Or even if they are coming clear up to the top, which, on a dry fly, they just tilt their body up, let the current push them back very efficiently. They're not expending any energy as they're traveling up. And now they are moving more than 6 inches or even a foot or even maybe a few feet at that point, but they're not using much energy. They'll get whatever they want, whether it's middle of the current or clear up to the top on the surface. Then they tilt their head back down, get back in the strike zone, and just a few minor kicks of the tail and they're right back where they started.
Yeah.
That's another way to move, but that's not crossing seams much. So there you go. I'm saying if they're in one seam, especially going backward, they'll move further, right?
Yeah, good point.
It's even fly dependent. Like I think we'll probably hit on this point for each style of fly, but they may not move the same amount of distance for a drab looking pheasant tail than they will for a mop or a squirmy or an egg. Sometimes attractor patterns will kick in some sort of extra motivation or indulgence for those fish to move a little bit more. And I think they probably do the same thing for certain streamer patterns and dries and things like that too.
For sure.
Yeah, knowing what we know about the physiology and behavior of brown trout, they're super reluctant to expend a lot of energy when the payoff isn't there, and so I think you think about like the protein source or the caloric density of an egg and a mop and a streamer, et cetera. And I think for them, I don't think they're sitting there going through the math, but I think they make this intuitive calculation of, hey, that's worth it for me to move for, or no, I mean, that pheasant tail is not worth it to move for.
Yeah, you brought up a case of like the age of the trout as well and the size of the trout, and that I think that actually does play a pretty big part in it. We've got a bridge at a park near our house that I'll take the kids down to regularly, and we can always without fail spot. There's always the best fish of the area always holds in the same spot, and so we can always go and like my daughter calls it her fish, and so we'll always go down and watch him feed, and he's the biggest of the area, and then. There's like a couple different holding spots that you can see from our perch that usually hold smaller fish, and the smaller fish do seem to be willing to move farther in feeding than that one that's 18-ish inches.
Interesting.
I think I read something somewhere that said basically depending on the size of the trout and the energy it has to expend to go and eat something.
Yeah.
So like a smaller fish, it's not going to expend as much energy, so it may displace more to eat.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think it does come down, you guys are saying this, to the size of the fly. And what'd you call it? The caloric density?
Caloric density.
I like that. I was thinking about this the other day. So many of I often say give them color. If the pheasant tails and the Waltz worms and more natural things aren't working really well, if I'm nymphing, I'm often saying, let's give them color. And we've talked about the green weenie working well in the summertime, here in the wintertime. And as we approach wintertime, the eggs will work really well. Different color, brighter streamers can work well at different times of the year. Obviously, a pink worm works so often in different locations. Just, that's what I'm saying. Different color. Maybe the colors attract them, not just because of the color, but because they're thinking, like you said, Trevor, they have that instinct that hey, there's gonna be more calories in that, and an egg certainly does. That's got a lot. There's a lot packed in there, right?
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah, for sure.
So they certainly, for me, move a little further for color too.
Well, this stuff plays into how I fish, and I think it's one of the reasons why I get stuck fishing slow sometimes.
Yeah.
Because just thinking through how far a trout's willing to move for a fly, it can make me be more meticulous in working through runs, especially if the water's colored up at all, and visibility is even reduced. I just have a hard time not working drift after drift through particular runs in an attempt, because knowing that fish may move 1 or 2 inches or 2 or 3 inches, I'm just trying to think like, gosh, I've got 12 feet of bank here I want to work.
Yeah.
I want to put a drift past every fish. So I get stuck in that sometimes. But let's move on to like streamers. I mean, I think that's probably maybe the other end of the spectrum.
Sure. They move furthest for streamers, right?
Yeah,
Biggest food form, they're going to move furthest.
Yeah.
Not always, but I think the bigger the food form, the more we're going to find that they'll move.
Mm-hmm.
I think the further they move, the less they are to eat a streamer.
That's
If
the
you
longer they chase, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right
If
on.
you-
Nice, good point.
If you can present it where they don't have to move aggressively to eat it, I think you have a better chance of getting to actually eat the streamer. But yeah, I mean, I've seen them move, especially rainbows. Like stocked rainbows will just chase for, it seems like halfway, 3/4 of the way across the river, and they won't eat it.
And then you
I've
feel
seen-
like you did something wrong, but maybe they just weren't
Yeah.
going to eat it. Yeah, maybe there's
Just like,
nothing.
get out of my area. I'm going to hang out with
Mhm.
you for a little bit. All right, leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, right to your feet, and then they'll just circle around and be gone.
Yeah.
Right.
One other thing I think is a factor is pressure. I notice on the streams that I fish, that are less pressured,
Yeah.
I'm more often surprised at the distance they'll travel to eat a nymph, a streamer, and not be spooked and not be concerned and just move, 5, 6, 7 feet and still eat as if it was natural. And it's it's shocking sometimes.
Yeah.
Where like a stream that has a lot more pressure, they're not going to move.
I think their perceived safety. And you could probably take down a number of factors like the water temperature. If the fish is stressed, it's going to move less distance probably for food, and cold water when its metabolism slows.
Yeah, like Derek said, I mean, there's a lot of variables there, but that's good. I mean, I think we covered them. Those are our expectations anyway. And we've fished a good bit around different areas. That's what we see, right?
Yeah.
That's a good one. Thank you, Derek. As fly anglers and tires, we understand the value of having the right tool for the job. AvidMax.com offers over 20,000 products and the knowledge to help find the right tools for your job, whether that be at the tying bench or on the water. Listeners of the Troutbitten podcast receive a discount at avidmax.com. Enter the code TROUT10, that's the number 10, at checkout to save 10% on your order. Orders over $25 ship for free, so you can put more gas in your tank or beer in your cooler. For all things fly fishing and tying, elevate your game with AvidMax. For over a decade, Smith Creek has provided innovative, high-quality fly fishing accessories designed to put your gear in easy reach, free up your hands, and keep our waters clean. This November, Smith Creek is releasing 2 new products just in time for the holidays. Check their website to see the new Tippet holder. Each unit is individually machined from high-quality billet aluminum and anodized in one of 2 eye-catching colors. They hold up to 5 Tippet spools with a patented, spring-loaded plunger design that is easy to load and keeps your spools right where you need them. All Smith Creek products are built guide tough and backed by solid customer service. To learn more about Smith Creek products, visit their website at smithcreek.co. Hey Josh, will you read this next question, please?
Yes. This is from Carter W. Adams in Wallsburg, Utah. Hey Troutbitten guys, I recently finished listening to your Stories and Experiences podcast, and I have to say it was my favorite of all of them. I've listened to every episode by now, and this was the best. Tactics are great, but just listening to you guys riff on what has happened on the river brought a smile to my face. Please do more of those kinds of episodes. If you do, I would love to hear about some of your bad days on the water. Maybe you could even fill a full episode with these. We all have those days when nothing works and we can't do anything right. How about sharing some of those? Those experiences are always good for a chuckle after the fact. Thanks again for the podcast, guys.
Gosh,
you guys don't ever
never
like, get skunked, do you?
No, never have bad days.
It doesn't happen.
I've never gotten skunked.
Some of my most frustrating times have been when you're just running into posted land. And I love exploring. Since I've had kids, I haven't explored as much, but I've said before, I had a topo map and the Dwight Landis book, Trout Streams of Pennsylvania. And my thing was to just go and explore, try to fish water I'd never fished before. But, well, it's Pennsylvania. And you run into a lot of private land. And sure, lots of times I try to plan my trips around state land, but you can't always do that. And so I just remember having some very frustrating, even days at a time, multiple days at a time, where you'd round the bend, you go, man, that's posted. All right, I can't fish there. Okay, I can't fish down there. Where can I fish? And so that can be pretty frustrating. You guys have run into that, right?
Oh, yeah. Hunting and fishing both. Pennsylvania.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean,
yeah.
We don't have Grobon here to share how it's different out west, but there's a lot more public access to river water and stream water out there where you can't really post the water itself. So out here in the east, if a stream is navigable, we can stay below the high water mark, but most of our small limestone streams are not.
I feel like somebody should tell a story about Mr. Happy.
He doesn't ruin your day. He can just ruin a moment.
Happy. His name
Captain
is
Happy.
Captain Happy, yeah.
He can ruin your day. That guy's a jerk.
Well, you just got to walk away.
None of us have admitted to having like really, really poor fishing yet.
I was going to say, what gets me, I'll just get in a bad rhythm. The other day I was having a lot of fun with streamers and things were smooth. And I was thinking, like, wow, this is really consistent. And it went on for a while. I put it back in the tree once on a bad backcast. And I went, boom, okay. And I look up there, I lost everything. I was fishing a mono rig to the streamer. I lost even the sighter because it's just the way it was. And so what? I have extra sighter material and I tied it all up. But it got me out of rhythm. I went back to it and I couldn't get it going again. And then I'm blaming it on, well, the sun changed. Well, this and that changed. No, I was just in a bad rhythm and I never got that back. And I tried going back to nymphs. And then, I don't know, it was a real snaggy day for me. And I did. I put it up in the tree probably 2 or 3 more times. It does seem for me that when things start to go, pretty bad, it's hard for me to pull it back out. I think athletes go through the same thing, right? You kind of just start, right? You get in a slump. That's what it is.
I go through the same thing. And the only way I found to fix that is to just go sit on the bank for 5 minutes or go get in the car and like drive somewhere for like relocate.
Yeah.
Because if I keep grinding away at it, it's just going to keep getting worse.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to keep getting madder and madder and more frustrated.
Right.
One of the tougher days in recent memory was with all of you last winter. You remember when we headed north, like in February?
That was a tough day.
It was already tough because the flows were up and we were trying to figure out where to go at like 4 a.m. We finally made a group decision and got on the same page. And how cold was the water? Like 33 degrees or something? And we couldn't get any fish to move.
Or something.
Yeah.
None of us
Slightly
caught
above
anything
freezing.
until we actually changed rivers there.
I don't think we saw a fish that day.
No,
We ate
until
lunch at like 10 o'clock and half of us went home. Bill brought some stale chips. It was great.
Oldies for the
stale
win.
chips. Yeah.
We didn't even expect much, but we expected a little bit more than that.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Between
brutal.
5 guys? Come on now.
Yeah, couldn't get anything going.
Yeah, that was horrible.
That was rough.
Yeah, so I mean, lots of ways to ruin your day.
Lots of ways.
Hey, Austin, you want to read this next question, please?
Yeah. All right, so this one comes from MK through email. Hey, Dom, I've heard you mention on the podcast a couple times now that there is no way you can carry 2 rods on a river. I think your other friends agreed with you too, but I will tell you that you are missing it. Having 2 rods ready to go with 2 different flies and methods can't be beat. You talk about efficiency a lot, but nothing could be more efficient than this way. Carry 1 rod on your hip with a rod holster and fish the other one. Or tuck 1 in your belt and fish the other. One of your advertisers actually has a video on this very thing. You should try it before saying there is no good way to carry 2 rods. All right,
man.
thanks for those thoughts, MK.
Are we going to roast this person?
Yeah, what was
we
your
gonna-
intention behind this one, Dom?
Well, I mean, I get a few comments every month that are like that, right? Questions,
So-
comments. We've addressed a couple of these questions throughout the podcast. There's always some assumption in there
Yeah.
that isn't fair. And the last sentence is that you should try it before saying there's no good way to carry 2 rods. Personally, I've tried it.
I've tried it.
Oh, yeah.
I've
And
tried it.
I've tried.
Right. So I think all of us here are saying we have tried it.
Tried
And,
2 rods. I've tried extra spools. I've tried everything.
Right. And so we've all fished enough that we really have tried it. And I think that it's definitely our practice that we're not going to give opinions before we've tried stuff. And if you keep listening to Troutbitten and you read the website articles, you'll realize that there's experience behind the things we're saying.
I'll admit that the 2 rod switch out is pretty quick on a boat. That's the
Boat.
only time
Yeah.
that I'll
There you
do
go.
it
Yeah.
on a boat.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But to carry it, it is such a hassle. The best I can describe it could be our waters. And so a lot of our waters, you're walking through brush, you're fishing
Constantly,
tighter
yeah.
quarters. Even in bigger rivers, I always find myself in an island in where that second rod, no matter where I stick it, catches on things.
Yeah.
If I was fishing a river that was 100 yards wide and there was nothing else around, I might consider it. But Dom, you've gotten me into the spool, and I think for me to, remove the rod from my back, have something hooked up on it, take the other rod that I have, put it on my shoulder or wedge it in my belt. I feel like that's about the same time it would take me to just take a spool and switch the leaders.
Now, by spool, just to be clear, you don't mean the whole reel spool.
Correct. I
You just
mean
mean
the
A plastic
like a
spool with
leader
the leader
reel.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We change leaders. I think we all do this very similarly. And yet we don't want to wrap a 30-foot leader up on our hand. I don't even like wrapping a 10 or 12-foot George Harvey leader on my hand anymore.
It'll tangle.
Those little plastic leader wheels are fantastic. Now, we've covered all this in the efficiency podcast, and I'll leave a link to all that in the show notes. I will say, I think what MK there is talking about, Devin Olson did a nice video on the way he likes to carry 2 rods.
Yeah, I've seen that.
It's well done. And I watched it because I'm always curious. Hey, maybe somebody has something figured out that I don't. What MK describes there is what Devin shows, and he'll have one on his belt with that. Is it O-Pros rod holder?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Oprah's.
And he talks about having it at different angles. And at that point, Devin even acknowledges, like, there's not really a great angle, but this is the way I do it. And then he talks about, putting one down in your belt. And you could see it. It's a good video. But as Bill pointed out, it doesn't work for us, okay? Because all of us here, our goal is to cover a fair amount of water. And I also don't want to be going, well, I'm not going to cover too much water today because I know I'll get my rods tangled. I'm not going to let my gear decide how, how much water I'm going to fish. Well, that's going to hold me back. No, I'm not going to approach things that way. So we're trying to cover water. And then we have a lot of overhanging brush here. I get guys from all over the country, and I get guys from out in Utah and Colorado. And often they don't have those kind of overhead obstructions. If you tuck a 10-foot rod or even a 9-foot rod strung up in your belt, go ahead and fish for a half hour in our waters and see what happens. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
You can lay it on the bank. That's another thing that Devin brought up. Okay, but then you're going to the bank and you're coming back, and going to the bank and coming back.
And
like Bill
inevitably
said,
leaving it there at some point.
Right, you're going to forget it. But anyway, like Bill said, it's easier for us. It takes less time to just change the leader. And the way we have things set up, it works for us. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
The other thing to consider here is what rods you're using when you do this.
Yeah.
So if you're carrying a 2-weight to fish nymphs, and then you've got a 7-weight to fish your streamers, maybe the solution is to fish one rod that's a 4 or 5-weight and be able to do both things pretty well, and then no longer have to carry two different complete systems in terms of presentation of a rod.
Nice.
Great point.
Consider that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think, I don't think anyone here feels like we're at a disadvantage for carrying one rod. And I think if we did, we'd carry 2 rods, right? And so I think the whole point of what we're trying to say, and that MK sort of misses, is that we love the system with which we're fishing because it allows us to have the versatility of 2 rods in one system, improving our efficiency and maximizing our time on the water.
There you go.
Yeah, that versatility podcast really is a good one to listen to, because we cover a lot of the things that we just touched on. We cover all of that in depth, and the way we like to change, and the rods that we do choose to be versatile and whatnot. Let's say that I think the only reason anybody is going to carry 2 rods is so they can be versatile, right?
Yeah.
And
Right. Yeah.
And so we've found a way to be versatile without carrying 2 rods. And we don't feel handicapped by not carrying those 2 rods. In fact, when I've tried to carry 2, I feel really awkward all day long.
It feels sloppy.
Yeah, frustrating.
Yeah.
Even when you're trying to be mobile and you're trying to move around, you're trying to like switch from over your right shoulder to going kind of backhand over your left shoulder. All of a sudden, there's something in the way of doing that. And you can't fish an entire side of the river,
Right.
without reorganizing things.
The only use case I've found to be able to carry 2 rods in is if I'm hiking or biking, let's say 5+ miles into a stream. And at that point, I'm not stringing up 2 rods. I'm just leaving a second one in a rod tube on a backpack.
Yeah.
That would be kind of my only...
In case you break one, right?
The only time I could give it justification.
Sure.
Yeah.
Last time I did it, I was night fishing, and maybe on a July evening, I went in about 7 o'clock, and I fished the dry fly hatch or the spinner fall, really, at the end. And then I biked in, and I had a second rod, and took my night rod with night setup and everything. But I went back to the bike, and I got my night rod and put my day rod, let's say, put that away. Kind of like what Bill's saying. That's the only way I was going to do it. And that's a very different thing, I think. Yeah, it is than what MK is saying. He's saying for him, it works for him. And that's the other thing I'll say. If it works for you, fantastic. That's it. I wouldn't argue it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you enjoy it, do it.
There you go.
Yeah. If something's working for you, there's no reason to change things.
For sure. Hey, Trevor, you want to read this one, please?
This message comes from Larry Hollister through an Instagram message. Hey, Troutbitten podcast. Thank you for changing my life with the mono rig.
Hey, now.
Seriously, what you guys say is true. I've doubled my catch rate, and I feel like I'm putting the fly right where I want it. As you say, it really is fun. Here's my question, though. Have you tried fishing a mono rig from a boat, and have you had any success?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Lots.
Yeah, right.
We like
And so
it.
specifically, what styles
It's
would
the
you guys
best.
say work best from the boat, and what are kind of the qualifications with which you fish the mono rig from a boat?
From a boat, I'm fishing most times a streamer or an indicator.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
occasionally I have tight lined, but
You mean pure tight line, yeah.
pure tight lining. But most times it's streamer first,
Or
and then if that
indicator
doesn't work,
nymphing? Yeah.
yeah, indicator and nymphing. Just
Tight
because
line to the Indy.
exactly, you can keep all that line off the water and be in direct contact with the indicator or the streamer.
Right on.
And the hookup ratio, I think, is a lot better because you're in
Yeah.
better contact.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's arguably more reason to switch to a mono rig for even indicator nymphing when
Yes.
you're in a boat, because depth is not an issue. So you don't ever have to worry about distance, because you can always get closer and you can always, clean up any sag that you have or anything like that. It really is kind of a perfect scenario to fish the mono rig, because you're not having to worry about distance issues that you could worry about if you're waiting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I just find monorig streamer fishing, when you get the hang of it, is really accurate, and you can really just get good at slinging streamers into tight positions and tight locations. That if you're trying to do a line first presentation or use the line to propel a streamer, you have potentially more room needed to kind of thread the needle on when you're slinging the streamer, and the streamer is the weight on that particular presentation. With a monorig, it's cool how you can get that streamer into small places and kind of just get really accurate with it.
And then you have full control over it the whole way, like we talked about.
Yeah.
And you have full control over not just where the head of the streamer lands and what position it's in, what angle it's in, but then where the tippet is, and that's where the streamer is going to go next. All the stuff, we just talked about this in the last podcast with the streamer presentations and, all about the head of the fly. That was the title. Yeah, those are the reasons I use it from a boat too. And for me, if I'm throwing underwater presentations, if I want to put my fly under the water, 95% of the time, I feel like the mono rig is my best bet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned like flipping the head of the fly. Mm-hmm. It is even easier from a boat because you have that additional height than it is from when you're wading. You don't gain any ability to do that sort of thing when you're in a boat with a fly line. But when you're in a boat with a mono rig, it makes the mono rig better for certain elements, like the control that you have over a streamer's head.
Yeah.
Now, there's certainly a time and a place to use a fly line or a sinking line out of a boat, especially.
Definitely.
The mono rig is great 95% of the time, like we said, but there's certain fly styles of streamers that you really can't effectively fish with a mono rig. Like a very lightly weighted, like swimming fly, I call them, where it's mostly just feather or something like schlappen that provides a lot of movement. And if you try to cast that fly on a mono rig and land it on the water, it's going to float and it's going to maybe sink 6 inches. You toss that fly on a sinking line. Now, we're not saying we're adding any supplemental weight here to split shot or anything like that, and that's the caveat. There are certain presentations that are limited, but 95% of the time, you're probably in good shape for control and manipulation of the fly.
Whether it's after a fishing trip or at a backyard fire, you can bet the Troutbitten crew has a case of New Trail Broken Heels along with us. It's honestly our favorite beer. This hazy IPA is smooth and full-bodied. Hand-selected citra hops lead to notes of bright clementine and juicy ruby red grapefruit. Broken Heels is a keeper. New Trail beer is proudly brewed in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and delivered cold to your favorite craft beer retailer every week. At New Trail, it's not about being the best angler. It's about getting out there. So enjoy nature's moments and reward yourself for a day well fished with New Trail Broken Heels. It's Troutbitten's favorite beer. Precision Fly and Tackle is a family-owned business with a passion for the outdoors and a sense of adventure. They are anglers who enjoy every moment spent on the water with family and friends. Precision Fly and Tackle carries the widest selection of Euro rods, reels, lines, leaders, flies, and accessories. From the beginner to the advanced angler, Precision Fly and Tackle can outfit every angler, no matter the budget. Visit them online at precisionflyandtackle.com. Then use code TROUTBITTEN10, that's the number 10, for 10% off your order. Gear up with Precision Fly and Tackle for your next adventure. Let me bring this up, Austin. All those flies that you just mentioned, and I'll even say a drunken disorderly, is something I've played with. That, you're supposed to fish that on a sinking line. And the ones that you just mentioned, they need the sinking line, to get that performance. That's what they're designed for. And yet, if you take a split shot and put it a foot and a half, or 2 feet up above your fly, you can get really fantastic presentations that are equal to, and in some ways maybe even better than, that sinking line. Now, that's something I've explored.
I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
I think it's blasphemy.
Yeah, that's all right.
I feel they drop unnaturally. They become jig flies.
No. You not
instead
at
of
all.
swimming flies.
You've used too much weight there.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is if you put the right amount of split shot in there, don't overweight the split shot. Put enough weight there in the right position so that it does what the sinking line would do.
Yeah.
I've messed around with it a good bit, and you can do some really neat things. I do it the most with my bunny bullet, which is it's not unweighted, but it doesn't have much weight. So you need to use weight with it. And I most often use it with a mono rig. And anyway, you can get really, really different presentations, but you can do very similar things, if not the same thing as you would with a sinking line. You got to be careful not to overweight it.
The thing I like about the sinking line is that the weight is distributed instead of one point.
The problem I have with that is your point of contact is not the fly any longer. Your point of contact is the split shot. If you're doing that, most times you're trying to get depth and get it deeper in the water column. And so you're in contact with that split shot. And so there is a little room to be disconnected from your fly.
Which is a good thing and a bad thing.
But if you're using a sinking line, aren't you disconnected from the fly as well? And more in contact with your sinking line?
Without as many options, too.
Because you can't reverse it.
In most cases, I think I would change my streamer to something that I have contact with and that I don't need to, put 4 split shots that are spread out or a sinking line on. Like almost always, I just change to a streamer that I feel like I can maintain contact with and get the depth that I need.
Yeah, like we said in the last...
And that's a fine solution.
It is. But like we said in the last episode, as soon as you put weight in the head of that streamer, things change, right? And so if you want to use one of these flies that is really designed for not having weight in it and having that neutrally buoyant effect, I'm suggesting to give it a try where you can combine that split shot with those flies and get some really interesting actions. That's all.
I've tried it. It's not for me, but that's okay.
Very diplomatic.
Isn't it? Yeah, but you're not a split shot guy with nymphs either.
It's probably the issue here. I'm not split shot savvy.
No. So we got off on a tangent there on that one.
Those are good. People like the tangents.
That's what they do. That's where we go.
One more thing on the fishing from a boat. Dom, do you have any suggestions or tips about line management with the mono rig on a boat? Like if you're fishing streamers, do you do anything differently with your line or find that it's at all more difficult?
You do have to be careful of that, right?
Yeah.
Get rid of those dang rings that Dom's boat had on it.
Oh, yeah. Those are the death.
Oh, not anymore. New pontoons, baby.
Yeah.
New pontoons.
Yeah, but he's still got the rings on the front.
Mm-mm.
You still got
Are the rings not there anymore?
Nope. Just
Oh,
like
heck
plastic
yeah.
cones
Nice.
up there.
That's
No more
Those
rings.
things were line management nightmare.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
We can
That's
float
the
again.
reason why you hate fly line from a boat, because you fished in that boat.
Yeah, but the
and
mono
it
rig,
catches.
that
The mono
catches
rig was
even
the
more.
worst on that.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. The
When you
mono
s-
rig, if you manage it,
But you can manage the fly line the same way. You can actually. So my answer to Trevor's question was going to be that you can strip it. Just because you strip it in doesn't mean you have to lay it down at your feet. And so I've gotten pretty good at stripping in, holding, stripping in, holding, stripping. So you're stripping in and you're holding basically loops of, 2 to 3 feet. And you can hold multiple loops and then you can shoot all that back out. You could throw it in a stripping basket or whatever, but I'm pretty good at holding those loops. And you can do it with a mono rig or a fly line.
I feel like it's easier with a mono rig.
Well, I think
That's
it's harder
I
actually
than
do
been
make
become
sure
like-
that I stretch my leader out.
Oh, you have
on
to.
a-
That helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's coiling up on you, that's a
And
real problem.
Yeah,
But
and I think it's a good point to just remind people of from time to time, because I think a lot of folks still fish the mono rig without taking the time to stretch out their
That's a
line.
big
and
mistake, yeah.
It's essential.
Very common mistake.
Yeah.
I'll say that I see.
Yeah.
I like doing that either way, whether I'm in a boat or not. It's become kind of common practice if I'm fishing and I'm having to recover a lot
Stripping
of line.
down.
I hold it.
Right.
Hold it.
Yeah. Strip and hold
Yeah.
instead of strip and let it fall.
Yep.
I know. So
And I've got a lot of practice wrapping music cables and stuff like that, so that helps. And
There you
there's
go.
sort
Seriously.
of a level of management that comes.
That's
but
Cable management.
Cable management.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
It's a skill. Transferable skill.
that's right.
Put that on your resume. I like it.
Rockstar.
All right. Hey, Bill, you want to read this next question?
All right. So this question comes from Russell Carr in Toledo, Ohio, I assume. Hey, Dom, thanks for what you are doing with the podcast. I have a question I hope you guys will answer. I hear a lot about tippet protection and the rod tip, but then it seems that you guys don't consider it much. I Euro a lot, and I follow other websites and videos on the tactics. most use a lighter rod than you recommend because it helps protect the tippet while hook setting and playing fish. But if I use a 4-weight and some of the fly rods you recommend, won't I lose tippet protection?
Really?
Did you choose me to read this because I'm
No.
I'm
5-weight man.
3X champ?
No, I didn't think about that, but
3X Willie.
that is the first answer,
3X
isn't it?
Willie.
Break that down. That's the first
Really
answer.
thick tippet.
I think it depends on the 4-weight though, because
Yeah.
I think some of the rods you recommend, I've fished down to maybe 5X and I've not really had a problem with the 4-weights. When I start to run into problems is with 5-weights. And when I would fish like 5X on a 5-weight and I would nymph, I would, at hook set, I would break off fish. But I don't know if 5X is what he's considering light tippet, because I feel like there's a lot of anglers out there that talk about fishing like 8X to 6X. And that's not really in my arsenal, so to speak.
Right.
So you're snapping line when you set that hook, Bill? Is that what you're saying on the 5X with the 5-weight? Or what's breaking in your system when you do that?
Usually the knots.
Okay.
Be like tie crappy knots.
It might be it.
It's that clinch.
He doesn't know anything about
It's that blood knot for your dropper.
Tell.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never had this issue fighting a fish or setting a hook. And so it's sort of hard to relate to. And I think you kind of got to do it and just see, and test it out. And I do think, I know there's such a thing as setting the hook too aggressively and certainly over fighting fish.
Mm-hmm.
But my goodness, if you want, Dom suggested this in passing, and I think all of us have done this at one time or another, is just kind of see what your tippet will hold up to with the rod that you have, hook it into a log or in a good snag and just see how hard you have to pull to break that tippet. I think all of us here too, very few of us are of the camp that you need to fish anything smaller than probably 5X. I think there are times where we all fish 6X maybe with certain light flies, honestly, just to balance the presentation more than anything. But I just have a hard time feeling like you would have trouble protecting tippet with the way these rods are designed.
Yeah. Austin, you fish a 5-weight all the time, don't you?
Yeah. And again, it comes down to what you're fishing. So the folks who are pushing or suggesting lighter and lighter rods are also suggesting that because they're fishing lighter and lighter tippet. Mm-hmm. Not to say that 5-weight can't handle 7X, but the amount of bend and give and softness in a 2-weight is going to lend itself a bunch of cushion when you go, and especially if you have a hook set like you're going to set a fish to the moon, like we see a lot. The hook set doesn't need to go very far, and we've talked about that too. It's all just about the short speed. Mm-hmm. So all you got to do is move the fly 1 or 2 inches quickly into the fish's mouth. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take a lot of force. It just has to happen fast.
Yeah.
So, hook setting, same deal with fighting fish. If you're breaking fish off on 5X with a 5-weight rod, it's got to be the mechanics of how you're fighting a fish more than it is the strength of your tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever heard this so worried about so much, with people fishing dry flies. And yet all my years growing into fly fishing, everybody was fishing a 9-foot 5-weight. Hey, buy this 9-foot 5-weight. That's your best rod. And people weren't worried about that with dry flies. Maybe now, especially with nymph rods, as people will call them anyway. If you're tight line nymphing, you're in touch with the fly, and now you're probably setting too far, is like what Austin's basically saying.
Yeah.
We're assuming that people that are breaking on the hook set, it's because you're moving the rod too far. And that's your fault. That's not the rod's fault. I think you're fishing at 7 or 8 weight with 8X tippet. Now that's extreme, but I seriously think I could do it and not break fish off.
I think it's depends on the rod, right? Because you can get a 5-weight that has a softer tip.
Oh, yeah.
And you can get a 4-weight with a softer tip, or you can get, a 2x4 and go out there and fish. And so it doesn't necessarily come down to the weight of the rod. Sometimes it's the action of the rod.
Yeah, especially in the fighting. And I realized that what I just said was I was talking about hook setting. Now, could I actually fight a really strong fish on an 8-weight with 8X without any flex to it? Not very well.
Probably not.
Yeah, it'd be a challenge.
And then I wouldn't bet on myself anymore, Not in the fight, but in the hook set, yeah.
And it's also like what's most important to you? Is it most important to you that you have the tiniest thing out there and that there's no way that the fish can see your line and that you're going to have a really, really great chance of fooling them? Or is it most important? Is it more important that you actually get the fish in without killing them? We all fight fish pretty hard. Mm-hmm. And we like to be able to steer them away from anything. We like to be able to get them in fast, and we like to be able to release them fast. It's kind of the ethical thing to do, is to fight a fish quickly where they're not exerting too much energy. And you cannot do that with the fish that we all want to catch with a 3-weight rod with 6X tippet. You cannot fight a big fish and get them in fast.
I think you can. It just depends what you're fishing in. You know, if you hook them in a really heavy, strong, fast riffle out in the middle of Montana, you're not going to land them fast.
Yeah. Right.
If you hook them upstream of you in a medium-paced water, you could probably horse them in pretty quick and it'd be fine.
Yep.
But that versatility, again, is gone.
Right. The versatility. And you're going to kind of have to hope that things go your way. Instead of, being able to handle anything that fish does, you're going to have to hope that it does things that are advantageous to how you need them to go. Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, and I think we talked in the fish fighting podcast about just ways you can stack the odds in your favor, right? Fighting that fish upstream, getting downstream of it, having a sideways rod angle, turning it to the bank, being aggressive, closing the distance between you and the fish. There's a lot of ways that I think we can minimize the impact of that tippet strength, but
you can compensate all that with a 50-gallon net, though.
50-gallon net. There you go. All right, hey, let's move on from that. Let me do this one real quick. It's really just a question that I've gotten from many anglers. I figured we would address it. And this is, again, about the monorig. So this isn't from anyone in particular. It's just a common question that I get, and it's about what we call the standard monorig. You can find all that on Troutbitten on the website. So we talk a lot about this leader and what we call a monorig. We've brought it up many times tonight. It's a tight line rig, and you can learn all about it on the Troutbitten website. But let's assume that you already know something about this monorig. And the question that we get so much is, how would you adjust this monorig to fish for steelhead? Especially this time of year. I get that question like once a week. Hey, how do you adjust that for steelhead? Guys?
I mean, when I'm trying to catch 20-plus inch fish, I don't think that you would have to change the basic structure of the monorig leader. I think you'd want to think pretty carefully about what size tippet you're going to use. I'd probably use 4X or bigger, just from a strength standpoint. I don't think anything about how we fish it is prohibitive to, how we would fish for steelhead. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, this is a pretty short answer. The regular build of the leader is the same. The sighter is the same for me. And I would just beef it up to 3X, maybe even 2X. That's the only change I make. People are often, I guess, surprised by that. Well, don't you want to go with a stouter butt section? Like, no, why? The tippet is what's going to break. We have the performance and the leader to give us the delivery on those flies that we want. That's not going to change for the species that we're fishing. So I'm not changing the build of the leader, just the tippet. Right. Everything from the sighter down. Only the sighter down,
Bill doesn't change anything for this.
I don't.
No, he's already on 3X.
I was already...
he downsizes.
I downsized. No, but I was hooked on, quote, steelhead. Now, it might be offensive to some people to call the fish that we have here in the east that run out of the lakes a steelhead. And so I'll call them rainbow trout that run out of lakes. I spent college years chasing them and fishing them a lot. Once I got into fly fishing, I thought, this would be great. And I'd start to use fly line, and I realized, wait a minute. And then I kind of reverted back and started to use the mono rig that I was using kind of on a spinning rod with an indicator as well. And I noticed that the fly rod gives you a little bit more length, and the line and not having that sag in the line on the water. One thing I'll tell you is the mono rig will cut through your fingers much quicker than fly line will. If you hook a good fish and he runs,
put him on the reel.
All right, hey, here's another question. Trevor, will you read this one for us?
Yeah. So this one comes from our friend Sean Helleman. Dom, here's a question for you. Maybe one for the podcast someday. As an improving beginner, I want to learn something every time I have the chance to be on the river, and I usually do. Sometimes the tough days can teach you the most, but other times I have tough days, and let's define tough days as those days when you feel like you should have done much better, where I just don't know what I'm doing. I try different tactics and attempt to slow down a bit and really focus on making good presentations, but nothing works. Those days are really frustrating because I feel like I come away having not learned a thing. Any thoughts on how to still learn something even on a day like that? Or strategies when it seems like nothing will work? Thanks, Sean Helleman.
Bill, you guided Sean, didn't you?
Yeah, he was great.
Right.
He had one of the most productive days. He caught a lot of fish. So yeah, this question's funny.
Yeah.
Well, he probably catches a lot of fish because he cares so much about doing things right, and he's analytical about it, right?
Yes, he was good. One thing I'll say that I've learned over years is sometimes on bad days, sometimes you're on a bad river. If I feel like I'm presenting the fly right, the conditions are good on that river and I'm not catching fish, after 2 to 3 hours, I'll just say, all right, this river's off today. I'm going to move to another one if I have the time to do that.
Yeah.
Instead of like kind of beating my head against the wall. You know, if you feel confident that you're presenting the fly right, you've tried a couple different scenarios, change rivers. Don't stand there and change tactics because it may not benefit you.
Interesting.
In terms of tactics too, if you're just saying I've presented my nymph in many different ways and they haven't eaten it today, if you haven't considered a different food form such as a streamer or a dry fly, I know many days that I've had where, you know, conditions for nymphing looked great and streamer fishing, you know, wouldn't have made a lot of sense, but the nymphing was just so slow. So I think, all right, let's just see what the streamer action's like. And it's great, right away. And sometimes it's just trying those things that don't seem like they'd make a lot of sense. And you might get a breakthrough. Now, regardless of, you know, you may never get a breakthrough on those days, but what you can, at least you can learn is that you yourself have persistence and that even on days when things don't go your way, you still fished hard. And knowing that you're able to do that and fish through conditions that aren't in your favor and come out at the end of the day thinking, you know, I did everything I could have and, you know, there's nothing I left out on the river. That's enough to know that, you know, you're improving even your own mentality.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like how you tied that in. Yeah. And I think, I mean, kind of to stem off of what you said and expand it too, Austin, you know, we can all talk about different tactics to use or ways to find success on days when you're not finding success. But if we assume you're not going to have success, use that as an opportunity to rotate through the different styles that you may not have spent as much time fishing and practice getting quicker at leader changes or practice getting quicker at changing your rig from streamer to a nymph to a tight line to the indicator and sort of focus on improving your efficiency, even if you're not bringing a lot of fish to the net.
Mental toughness, man. It's important. Like if you can on a day like that, like test yourself and just push yourself and say, I don't really care that I'm not catching anything. I'm going to continue to try to fish hard. I'm going to continue to try to give every spot the best presentation I can. Then you're building something in your mind that at some point is going to pay off. Like on the next hard day, when it just takes a little bit more persistence, it's going to pay off big time.
That's nice.
Even if it doesn't today.
They say necessity is the mother of invention, right? And I was just thinking about last season, 2 seasons ago, night fishing, Josh. I had probably 6 weeks in a row where I didn't catch a fish. I might have caught one fish, maybe a smallmouth bass instead of a trout, and you consistently caught fish. And out of that time, I was super frustrated, and had to dig kind of into that persistence of hope that each presentation could potentially catch a fish. But I also sort of began to play around with and eventually sort of spent more time working on a couple different types of presentations that have had some success for me on nights now when I'm not finding success in other ways. And so I feel like had I not experienced those tougher nights on the water, I wouldn't have spent time with a couple different types of presentation style that I ended up using that I did find success on. And now it actually bolsters my success typically on nights when I'm already having success because it's another tool in my belt that I've had to try and had to sort of develop out of those periods of dry kind of success.
I like what we're saying there. Even on the slow days, it becomes more about you than the fish. And if you stay focused, for me, that's a reward. We've talked about just fishing it well. Fish it well. Feels good. Bill, you're talking about moving. That's actually something I hardly ever do anymore. I used to do it more. What I found is, for me, I felt like I was wasting time and I was almost frustrated with myself because I gave up. Now that's just me. That's my approach. And I feel like I have enough, tricks in my bag or tactics that I like exploring, or I like even trying to dial in better. But things that I have confidence with that I will, there's not enough hours in the day for me to try all those things and to really cycle through all the tactics, more than once or twice. So I enjoy that. I enjoy trying to stick it out, go around the bend for sure. I mean, I'll hike upstream, downstream, or even stay in the same watershed, but just relocate a little bit. Just a wholesale change is hardly have ever worked for me anyway. And I do. I like that challenge. I learn a lot on those slow days because, it always stands out. We were talking about, Austin, you said things that shouldn't work all of a sudden. Sometimes they do.
Yeah.
It was last January and nothing worked on one of our favorite rivers there. And oh man, I was getting good nymphing drifts. I did some streamer stuff. What ended up working at the very last half hour of the day, I did a dry dropper, which I hardly ever throw a dry dropper in the winter because instead I'll just, I'll throw the Indy up there instead of a dry fly because they're not going to eat the dry. I had already done the Indy, but I don't know why, but I threw the dry fly up there and I caught 5 fish in the next half hour on the dry
fly. On the nymph?
Yeah. On the dry, say on the dry fly. And it was a CDC
Amazing.
and elk, like a size 12 CDC and elk. They had no business eating that, but they did. And what did I learn? I'd learned
Anything
that,
works sometimes.
That's right. Everything works sometimes. That's what I learned.
Yeah.
It's
That's
fun.
cool. I like
Got
that.
a good memory from it.
And now you know, right? Yeah.
I've had a lot of success in changing rivers though.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like if I come in the first couple hours or just, I don't know, and sometimes you have to step back and realize like, okay, what's going on? Like, is it the winter? Is this river colder than another river could be? Is it? And so those things kind of, as it's starting to get colder, those things play in my mind a lot more than anything else right now.
Yep. I'm with you. Hey, let's do one more. Bill, you want to read this one for us?
Sure. This one is from Amy Muncie in Colorado. Hello, Troutbitten podcast. My question is a short one. If you could fly fish anywhere on the planet for a full week, where would you go? Thanks for putting together the podcast, videos, and articles. My friends and I have learned a lot, and what you call life on the water is part of our daily lives.
That's cool.
I love it. Yeah. It's something special about hearing from women on the questions too. I know that women are a big part of your readership and listenership, but it's fun to hear them represented in the questions and stuff. So thanks, Amy, for writing in and cheers.
Where would you go? 1 week. You got 1 week. Where are you going?
All expenses paid?
Yes. Let's just say
Free trip.
Yes. Free
New
trip.
Zealand.
Anywhere you can go.
Yeah, I feel
Anywhere
like,
you
I
want to
mean,
go.
like,
Maybe New Zealand.
yeah, you watch some videos
Iceland.
of New Zealand, and yeah.
Yeah, the free thing really does change things.
For sure.
And she didn't say that. So, but I'm just throwing that in there because
We're
my
putting this
answer
in there.
before we started talking about money, my answer was, if you give me a full week, I mean it. I swear I would love to just fish some of the stuff north of here that I haven't fished for a while, and I'd like to just camp up there. I would like to even fish some of our favorites, and just knowing that I have a full week to do it, pick up where I left off. And I'd love to have a full week to just dedicate to a lot of my favorite waters, and then some of the secondary stuff that I haven't hit for a while. And a lot of that's because I have kids.
Yeah, that's a huge
I don't
factor.
think it's big enough.
Yeah, but if there's no guilt and there's
Right.
no money
There's no guilt.
involved,
This is the
then-
perfect world.
Right.
Where are you going?
Well, she's
going to-
if we're saying it's free, right? Yeah.
Yeah, free.
I think New Zealand
and you have
would be
no
awesome.
responsibilities.
Yeah, New Zealand would be so
I want to
cool,
fish
just
for
from,
bull
like-
trout somewhere.
Ooh, bull trout.
I'm going for bull
North-
trout.
There we go. Now
Tell me
you're
where there's
getting-
bull trout. I'm going.
Go up to Canada.
I've always thought that it'd be cool to do like the
Utah.
brook trout in Labrador.
Ooh,
Really?
yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty neat.
Seems like a
But
grind.
you have to get like dropped off in there. Like you gotta get like a
Oh, those drop off
yeah.
trips. That's up my alley. I'd do that.
exactly. And that's
That's
kind of
what
what
I
you
want.
have to do up there. I think.
Let's get remote. Bring our boat.
Yeah, I'd like to
Going.
raft through Alaska or
get a
something.
couple tags.
Yeah.
I'm going. I already got it.
Bill.
I'm going to Mongolia, and I'm going to fish for taimen
Hey, now.
There you go. That'd be fun.
Wow.
because they're the size of muskie, but they are trout.
Taimen
And
are
that's
wild. Yeah.
and
They're
you're in
terrifying.
a place, and they're in a place that there is like nothing around. Big fish, no one around. It's perfect. Sign me up.
Aren't those like the most aggressive
Mm.
fish of their class?
Yeah,
Don't they eat everything else?
they are. Yeah, they eat like squirrels and rabbits.
Right, yeah.
They're
We could night fish. We'd have to tie a bigger
Human
fly,
man's
Josh.
calf muscles. Like,
yeah.
When you catch one, are you gonna be like the guys on the fly fishing film tour and get really, really overexcited?
Rip your shirt off.
I'm gonna
Flex them out.
rip my shirt off.
I'll be there filming it, so I'll be the one
Yeah.
getting real excited for him.
God!
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if it's the fish with 10,000 casts, but it's looks like they're hard to catch. But yeah,
We just said they're aggressive. Are there not very many of them?
I think they're just hard to find.
yes.
Maybe not so
Yeah.
hard to
Gotcha.
catch.
I'd like to catch some of those golden Dorado. Those are
Yeah,
awesome.
that's true. See,
That
Yeah,
might be
I'm
those
starting
look
to
awesome.
expand my horizons, right?
Yeah.
there we go. Got you off
Yeah,
of
the
northern
golden
PA
Dorado are
to
sweet.
catch 10-inch brook trout.
That's its own
10-inch
thing now.
trout.
10 inches a trophy.
It is.
You look at some of these places and you're like, they're famous for the fish that you get to fish for. And when you go in there, it's not necessarily about the tactics. It's just about getting to fish for them. If you bring
Yeah.
tactics into some of these places, you could, can you imagine?
Yeah.
Are you going to rack up numbers? You're going to hook like 30 Dorado in a day?
Get a sore arm.
Better bring your bucket.
I'd like to do some saltwater stuff too. I've never fished saltwater, right? Well, with a fly
thought you
rod.
did.
Sure.
No, with a fly rod.
Ooh, yeah, like striped bass.
I would love to do that.
Yeah, you did for like 30 minutes with me.
No, not even 30 minutes. I didn't even hold your rod for 30 minutes. It wasn't productive. I
Wow.
went back to my gulp minnows, buddy.
We're pretty basic. When it all comes down to it, we'd like to fish the same spots that everybody else wants to try to fish. But
If money wasn't a
it
factor.
seems like we're
think-
talking about all the same places.
I think what Dom said was cool though, because I agree. I mean, a lot of it's time. Time's that luxury that we don't have, and so that it's like the kind of hidden part of her question. Like for a full week, like that's the part that most of us look at and we're like, man, a whole week. What would
Well,
that
the
feel
other
like?
thing is with kids, I mean, you can't, you might not be able to do one of those drop off destination trips unless, well, you get a satellite phone or something like that, right? Because you've got to be in touch. I mean, we have young kids.
Yeah,
Three of us have these young kids, and
Yeah. Austin is
the
a young
wives are not
kid.
going to be real happy if you go, well, not going to hear from me for a week. I don't know. I wouldn't want to do that, you know?
Austin and I
another
will send
thing.
you the hero shots of the Tayman and Golden Dorado next year.
Right now.
There you go.
Those are two species.
That'd be cool.
Those are good ones to bring up. And add in bull trout for me.
So if anyone wants to send us on a free week-long trip,
There you go.
we
Yeah.
will fish. We will fish your gear. We'll do what you want.
We will even
Just get in touch.
That's right. We will answer all of your questions
We will hold
for
your
a full
rod.
season. Even that'll be our payment to you.
We'll guide you a day. As
One
long
day.
as we can
Half
fish
day.
for the Tayman the next
Half
day.
day.
Yeah.
Tie you up
We'll
on a
bring
weed
you
beater.
broken heels.
That's right.
Now you're talking.
I would give anything for a week of fishing even here. Like a week of fishing.
That's how I feel,
like,
Josh,
It's like, you made that point. I'm like, I didn't really think about that, but that'd be easier. You know, I mean, the part of that would be more enjoyable because I'm not going to be stressed.
I
I'm
know,
not going
the
to be
travel.
worried. I'm going to be like, there's going to be no pressure.
in.
I'm just going to get to fish the water that I love and know.
Yes.
And fish it for a week hard. That'd be fun.
And you know where you're going and you're excited to pick up where you left off the next day.
Yeah.
Or that's a good point. I think that's part of it for me too,
Yeah.
Josh, is the relaxation of it. When you say you got a full week. Well, if you told me I had a full month, I might be more willing to travel, out of country, right? With the stress of all that, and the planning and then the hay.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Learning.
it's been 3
and
days
there's a
now
lot,
and I
yeah.
haven't even moved a good fish. Oh man, this whole trip's going to be a bust. But if you go around here, it's going to be a lot more relaxing
Yeah.
in that way. There are ups and downs.
Bill's like, I did that last week.
I know.
Yeah.
right?
I see.
Different life,
I
man.
guess. Yeah.
Free
Every
man.
year I
Comparison.
take
Free man.
in the spring and the fall. I take
It's
a
the
week
free
and I
man.
fish around PA. I get to go up to camp and I just do nothing but fish for 6-7 days.
All right. Quick story. This is why we call it, I don't think I ever told this. Bill the Free Man, Dell. Right? So my kids were young. I'm going to say like 7 and 9 years old. We were at a local pizza shop out on Benner Pike. And Bill texted me, hey, you want to go fishing? I said, nope. I'm here with the boys. We just ordered a pizza. Where are you? And he ended up being like, I don't know, 3 miles away, 5 minutes away. And he's like, oh, I just fished here. And I said, oh, stop over. We just ordered this pizza. So he knew where it was. He walked in right after the pizza came. The pizza came. It's still steaming.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. Bill walks in. The boys had never met him. And he sat down beside my youngest son, Aiden, who, again, he's like 7 years old maybe at the time. A little shy, right? And here comes Bill, grown man. Sits right beside him in a booth. Sits right beside him in a booth. Doesn't say anything. But Bill doesn't say anything to me or to the kids. Just reaches down, grabs a piece of pizza, and starts eating it.
You just think of the experience these children are having.
Right.
It's a strange man. This strange 6'4" man just walked in.
Aiden's eyes are just kind of real big. What's going on? What's going on? And Joey's sitting by me in the booth, and he looks at me. And he looks at Bill, and Joey's more outspoken, and he goes, Dad, what's he doing? What's this guy doing? What's this person doing? Then I gave it up. I'm like, oh, just, this is Bill. He's my friend. And I told him, come on over and eat some pizza. And so then Joey was very curious about your life, right, Bill?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he's like, so
had
you're up here
many
fishing?
questions.
You did, because that's Joey. He's like, so you're up here fishing, huh?
Joey's awesome.
Oh, do you catch fish? You're up here. I don't know. It's like a weekday or something. And Joey knows I can't just fish any day that I want necessarily. And he's like, so you just fish whenever you want. Oh, you have a camp up here. And then he asks you, are you married? Do you have any kids? And Bill's like, nope. So Joey says, so you're like a free man. You just do whatever you want. You can fish whenever you want. You're like a free man. That was it.
Yeah.
That's how you got the nickname.
Joey the Free Mandel.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a perfect Bill experience.
Yes.
And yeah, every time I see Joey and Aiden, they both say,
free man.
They call me the free man.
That's right.
Who's that? That's the free man.
He's the free man.
Oh, that's so good.
Stay free.
You become infamous among all our children, Bill.
That's right.
My kids just like to hang off you, I think, and give you a workout.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know why, but they never showed any fear around you.
Yeah, they just run up and jump on me and attack me.
Yeah, they should. They should be afraid of
I'm their human punching bag.
I try to warn them. I'm like, you don't know. He's not safe.
Free Mandel.
All right, good stuff, guys. So, hey, what did we get through? 8 questions, I think.
Yeah,
Got a couple dozen more.
It's kind of fun. They're like built for kind of riffing. So it is kind of fun to do that style.
True enough. Yep. Anything that we missed on any of those questions you guys would like to address, or
we missed Matt's belligerence.
That's true.
There we go. Okay, we're good.
We got
it. There we go.
That's Matt. All right, there it is. A full episode of listener questions. This is good, and it kind of gives you a chance to steer the ship. This is a fun format, and I'm sure we'll do it again soon. So keep sending in those questions because it's your input that helps lead the way for this Troutbitten podcast. Thanks again to my friends here with me tonight and to all of you listening. Thanks also to our sponsors. Please use those discount codes and drop these companies a line thanking them for supporting Troutbitten. Good stuff. All right, Josh Darling, will you read us out?
Oh yeah. Remember, the Troutbitten Project is a free resource for all anglers. The Troutbitten website hosts over 900 articles with endless stories, commentaries, tactics, tips, and more. Find what you like through the top menu and through the search page. Navigate by way of the categories and tags too. Be sure to find the Troutbitten YouTube channel currently featuring the Troutbitten Tips series in collaboration with Wilds Media. These are short, useful, and unique tips for your fly fishing life. Thank you for listening to the Troutbitten podcast. Please give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and leave a comment because that really helps. Until next time, friends, fish hard, enjoy the day, and find your life on the water.
Better bring your bucket.
Sign me up.
Tame are wild. Yeah.
Nice. We can float again. Rockstar.
Dell.
Yeah.
It's all just about the short speed.
And we will fight until that happens.
I've never had this issue.
Put them on the reel.
Let's steelhead the rainbow trout.
You're an elitist.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
Stinky bass.